All right, welcome back. In this video, what we're going to work on is adding CSS to an HTML file. And the first thing we need to be able to do is go through the ways that that can be done. All right, so we'll just get started here. We're going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call this add CSS. Okay. And then we're going to open up a new window from VS Code, drag that folder in. Okay. And then, all the normal stuff. We're going to work on an index file. So we make that, put in our exclamation point, hit return. And each demo, I'm going to go through this process. I want you to get really familiar with this, right? Make a folder, get it set up, put in your elements, so you can just do this stuff in your sleep. Okay, we're going to add a folder. We're going to put our CSS files in there, and I'm going to make another folder. I don't know if oops, I don't want it there. On an IMG folder. Okay. All right. So we're going to need something to work with. So nothing fancy. We're just going to do an H1, and then we'll add a paragraph. Okay, and let's just go find some lorem ipsum. There we go. That's fine. We'll just stick that there, and okay, we'll save that, and we can go ahead and do, right, we're gonna open it up in live server. There we go, right? All very just normal stuff, just a headline and a paragraph, just so we have something to work with. Okay. All right. So the first way that we can add CSS is called an inline style. All right. So, and we'll just and to do an inline style, you add it to whatever tag in the opening tag that you want to have it applied to, right? So I'm just going to add and use the style attribute, and then you type in the rule. All right, and you have to format it correctly, right? So style is attribute equals, open up the quote, and then you put in both parts of the rule in. So the property, font size, and then the value. Make sure you have the semicolon and the colon in the right places. So if we go ahead and save this, and you'll see, right, that's important, it's turned to 96 points. Okay, so this was the very first way that styles were applied in HTML ages and ages ago. With only a few rare cases, we don't do styles like this anymore, right? The reason being is that you have to put one of these on every tag. Now, right, we only have 2 tags in our email or HTML here, but you can imagine if you had hundreds of pages, all with hundreds of HTML. Like, what are you going to do? Put the style tag on each and every one of them? And yes, in the old days, that's what we did. But we don't do that anymore because it's insane. And trying to change something, or the opportunity to make a mistake, all bad. Way too much dreadful work. So, but it still works, right? It still does. Now there is one case where we do use inline styles, a specialty case, and that is for HTML emails. But even there, right, we don't write the email by putting in the inline styles. Even there, we still use one of the other methods, either a linked style sheet or the styles in the head, which we're going to get to next, I think. And then we use an online tool that will then take that CSS that we've linked to and apply it throughout our document inline, right? And then we use that inline HTML in the HTML email, right? So that's a specialty process. It's really the one time where you may bump into inline styles, but otherwise we just don't do this, okay? But it does work. I'm gonna rename this as 01 inline style. Okay. Now I'm going to make a new index file. Type my exclamation point, hit my return. Okay. Go back here and borrow. Okay, and now we're gonna right-clicking down here. I can turn that off, and you don't always have to. You can use this little Go Live button, which is connected to Live Server. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay. All right, and now I'm just gonna get rid of that. Save that. So we're back to where we were. Okay. All right. Now our next type is called an internal style. So I'm going to use the command / to make this a comment, right? We can have comments, and now the browser will not read this, but we can just use this as a note for ourselves. Okay. And the way we make an internal style is in the head section, we can use the style tag. Now, anything we put in here, right, we're going to put CSS rules in here, will be used by any tags in the body and will style accordingly. All right, so similar to what we had just done, we're just going to make an H1. All right, and we'll do font size and go 96. We save that, and there it is. All right, so just add a little space here so we can see it. And we can put in as many rules here as we want. Now these rules will only apply to this file, right? And sometimes when you're working and you're just, you're trying some stuff out and maybe you just, don't want to gum up your other styles, this can be useful. I use it often, as I said, when I'm working on a project and I need to add something, but I don't want to put it in the regular style sheet just yet. Just maybe want to try it out and see how it impacts here. And what it'll do is it'll get these styles ready, and then as soon as it hits the H1 down here, it'll apply the style. Okay. All right, that's it for that one. And I'm just renaming them so that each example we have available. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. So our third option is going to be a linked style. And this is the most common. This is what we'll use in class primarily. Okay, we'll go ahead. And as we've done in other demos, right, we're going to go into our CSS folder and create a style sheet. Okay. And then here, so now we've got the style sheet, right? We don't have any styles in it yet. Let's go back. And we use the link method again in the head. So we do link, and there it'll give us CSS. And we've called it style already, so the default of style.css, right? And if we go ahead and save that, and then we head into our style.css and we hit H1, and then we do font size 96px, right? We save that, and we come back to our index file, and we're all linked, and we reload, and nothing happened. What's gone wrong, right? So, right? Do you see what? Did you catch the mistake I made? Right? You remember from our other demo, right? Style.css. We're linking to that file. This syntax says that the style should be at the same, in the same folder, or add CSS folder as the index file. Is that the case? No, it's not. Right? Our style sheet is inside a folder called CSS, but the CSS folder is at the same level. Right? So, if you remember, right, we're at index, so we can go CSS / right? And there it is. It sees that, so we save that. And now on save, you see it jump up to 96. We know our style sheet is definitely working. Okay. All right. So those are the first three methods. Our next method is a little more challenging, but still works just as well and can be very useful when you're doing more complex CSS, or you're working with CSS libraries or other more advanced features. And the next one is called importing style sheets, right? So let's just go ahead and save this. Back to our index file. Okay, and we're going to call all this imported styles. Clicking port 5500 basically turns off the old one, and then we hit go live, and then it will connect to our new one. So let's go take a look. Oh, and this is still linked up, so we don't want to use that, so we'll get rid of that. Okay, and I suppose I should have been doing that. So easy enough to see. Okay. Now, an imported style sheet, right, works very similar to a linked style sheet, right? It also goes in the head. So we're going to do style. Oops, let's spell it right. And we're going to make sure we're going to add the attribute of type. So we're sure what we're working with. And it's, you know, the type attribute is not strictly required anymore, but it's still a good idea to use. Okay, and now we're going to use the at import. We don't want to use the at import URL. We're going to do the first one with just quotes. And it works, you know, pretty much the same way as the linked style sheet does, right? So we can just type in CSS / it finds it. Okay, and it works. Where this is often more useful is if we wanted to use a style sheet that was hosted somewhere else on the internet, right? And we might do this with other assets or other libraries for CSS that we might be using from other companies or from other places. But so there's another option. I'll put in the URL, right? And then inside our brackets or our parentheses right here, we would put the URL. Let's make this a little bigger so it's all on one line. Okay. Now there is no style sheet there, so it's not going to do anything. But this is the syntax, right? We put in the URL. Now these yellow parentheses is the first time we've seen this. This is an argument. So at import is our property. We're looking for a URL, and then we provide the argument for the URL inside these parentheses, again with our quote, then the full URL, close the quote. Okay, that's our proper format. And there are other style sheet types that you may run into. One that's very popular is what's known as a print style sheet. And a print style sheet, say your design is really dramatic, and you want people to be able to print it out, but you don't want them to get all the graphics and all the funky layout and the whole bit. You just want to be able to print out the content in a neat, clean format. It's completely common to write another style sheet that lays out the content more simply. Make sure it's black on white, right, so it prints on the paper easily, so that people can print out the information without getting all the gunk that might be part of the website. So, so maybe that might be all right. And then we use an indicator called print. All right, we save that. So these are the basic, import types. And again, these are put in the head. Again, they will only apply to this one file, right? So they may have limited use in this context. But we can also use this rule in linked files. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we get back to our index file. And we're just going to get rid of all that. Okay. All right, so now we need to sort of set up a couple of additional files to sort of show how importing from other CSS files will work. So the first thing we're going to come over here and make is call this imported style. That's CSS. And we're going to sort of target the P tag in this example. All right, we'll go with same font size, and we'll make it, 36 pixels. Okay. All right. Now it's not going to do anything. We haven't linked anything, but the rule, right? This is a style sheet that we're going to use and import it into another style sheet, and then have that imported style sheet linked in our regular HTML file. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll sort of put it in place and then explain when you might want to do something like this. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and add style imports.css. Okay. So in our style imports, we now are going to add a rule, the @import keyword, right, and our quotation marks. I'm just going to use single ones. And then I want to put in the path to my style sheet. So imported CSS, and then this is just a CSS rule, so all right, and we just put that in place. Okay, right, so we've got our paragraph rule, right, in the imported style.css, then our style imports.css imports that file, right? So now we've added that. Any styles that are in here is now loaded as part of this style sheet. Okay, so now when I go to my index file, I'm going to link. Oops. To CSS / right, and I want style imports.css. I save that. And look what happened, right? So here's that 46 point type there, right? So let's just, so we're linking, right, from our index file, right, this file here, we are linking to style imports, and in style imports, we're importing CSS from the imported style.css. Okay, so why might anyone go through all this, right? It seems rather complicated. It's not uncommon for a big project to have thousands of lines, right? We've only got 3 lines of CSS here, but you could have thousands upon thousands of lines of CSS code in order to do a really well-designed, complicated website. And as you'll find when you start working on your projects, you know, scrolling up and down through the file, trying to find the right section or where the rule is, or, you know, if your rules have gotten a little out of control, it can get really time-consuming and slow and messy. One way to organize all that is to break out individual style sheets for maybe major sections. So maybe you have a style sheet for just the menu, right? So you have a menu with a big drop down and fancy flyouts, and the menu also has to be responsive, so it has to turn into a hamburger and then have a completely different layout. So to get all that working, maybe it makes sense to just take that whole section, call it, you know, menu styles.css, and then just import it in your main style sheet, right? So when you're working on menu changes, you know, you just go into that file, you know, instead of thousands and thousands of lines, it's only maybe hundreds or maybe one, you know, whatever it is. And then for each section, you would have an individual style sheet that would tie to some sort of logical grouping, and then you could get them all to import. So that covers everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a little file save as. Imported, and I want to call this linked. So there's 3 main ways that we put CSS into a file, right? Inline, internal, and linked. And then within the linked operation, we can also add the import, right? And just import our stuff The import rule also works with internal as well as linked. All right. Okay. That covers this video for now. So these are all the main methods of adding CSS to your website. Okay. All right. I will see you in the next video.